The spots. What follows is the transcription of a therapeutic evaluation between an incarcerated mental patient, Mr. Charles Victor, and his new attending therapist, Dr. Gregory Towers, at the Bay Area State High Security Mental Health Facility. This transcript has been lightly edited for anonymity and clarity. The event took place on August 26th, 2022. You can take the legs off, but cuff them to the table, please. Privacy, please. But Dr. Towers, his previous attending care, Dr. Fletcher, has given me full discretion. Privacy, please, and thank you. Fletch said you'd be coming, Dr. Towers. Mr. Victor, do you prefer Mr. Victor, or Chuck, or Charles? I'd prefer to get out of here. I suppose you would. I suppose we're going to take it from the top, even though you have all the disclosures, all of Fletch's transcriptions going back. Yes, going back a little over 4 years. Look, I'm not Dr. Fletcher. He's an old man who should have been retired a decade ago. He doesn't have what it takes to view this case objectively. I, on the other hand, have sought out your case, and cases like it for some time. It's fascinating to me. It's special to me, Mr. Victor. So let's start. I'm not discussing it anymore. Not with anyone new. Every time I do. Chuck, you're still a young man. I think that it may be time for you to have some visitors. Like who? Your parents were quite helpful in assisting me into this position. They're quite eager to have a chance to see you again. And, depending on how this goes, I may, even likely, will be able to make that happen. But yes, we need to take it from the top. So, tell me about May 18th, 2018. Okay, here it goes. I woke up in my apartment after working 18 hours and sleeping 3 hours. My cat Cheddar was nestled under my arm, and I had been working like that for a week or so. I couldn't really recall then, and I can't recall now. Anyway, I was due back in the office in an hour. I really wanted to take a shit, but I had been so constipated for it. Let's skip ahead a bit. How about your occupation? And then when did the disturbances start happening? That wasn't disturbing enough for you? I was a graphics designer for the Big Cheese. I was a lead artist on a new streaming series that they wanted to get out by July, and it was deadline season for the test audiences. We were behind and understaffed. I was doing the work of at least 2 or 3 people. Okay, so you were stressed, malnourished, probably dehydrated, apparently constipated as well. Tell me, other than the copious amounts of caffeine you previously reported drinking in these earlier sessions, were you on any other mind-altering substances? Modafinil, amphetamines, cocaine, LSD, DMT, mescaline, peyote? Were you currently drinking at that time in your life? Or were you California sober? Were you on any nasal decongestions, even? For the millionth time, no, zip, nada. I was tired and run down. We all were. So, you then started seeing something odd in photographs online. It started there. During one of our 10-minute spark sessions, basically a mental break from our design work to get out and roam the internet for inspiration. Call it a digital recess of sorts. It's a crappy excuse for a real recess when you're locked in 6 walls and no windows. Anyway, they wouldn't let us leave our desks, even to go to the courtyards. At least those are missing one wall. Back to the disturbances. Chuck, tell me again, how did it start? Well, I was thinking about my cat Cheddar, and I was looking at cat videos on Facebook, and that's when I saw it for the first time. The spots. Well, they weren't really spots, and hard to describe. It appeared like an asymmetric blotch on the fur of one of the cats in the video, but it didn't look like fur. The closest thing that I can think of it reminding me of was mange, like chewed up, parasite-ridden skin and bits of fur mixed in on the skin. It was only on one of the cats. And even though that cat was entirely still, that spot, that blotch, it seemed to move. Would you say it pulsated? Or the blotch looked like it was carved into them. And it didn't seem to pulsate. It seemed to glimmer or be shiny, like it was lights reflecting off something like coal. But it wasn't a shine. It seemed to like swim and mesh together, a brown and flat black and dark green and purple. The more I looked at it on the cat, the more uncomfortable I became. It felt like something was wrong with the cat, and I felt bad for the cat. But as I watched it, I just became more and more weirded out by it. Like it wasn't on the cat. It looked like it was on my screen, and I was so transfixed on this weird spot that I blew my whole 10 minutes of the spark staring at it. I went back to work and, came back to the video on my next spark break, and it wasn't there anymore. I couldn't find the video. I couldn't find it anywhere on Facebook or YouTube or anywhere. All right, so, Chuck, we're going to have to go through some other things again here, so I'm just going to ask you, though. In the past, have you ever been diagnosed with any visually induced phobias? The fear of clowns, the fear of patterns, the fear of holes? No. And you know that. I know that. I'm just asking you again for the sake of we're getting to know each other. Have you ever experienced any kind of fixation or trepidation in your visual art or others before? No. Okay. What happened next, Mr. Victor? The third spark break of the day, I saw it again. This time it was on a florist website. I was going there to buy my girlfriend Tammy some flowers because I knew I hadn't been around much the past week or month or however long I'd been working like this. And then there was another blotch. A different spot, a different carving appeared on the skin of one of the models holding the flowers on the website. It manifested slightly differently, almost like an apparition, like the spots you get when you rub your eyes and you see them kind of floating around. But it was stuck on her. And I remember taking the mouse cursor and rubbing on it for some reason. And I remember being more and more repulsed by it, and I started thinking about skin cancer and smallpox, thinking that it was under my skin somehow, and I wanted to tear it off that poor woman who had it on her. I was about to touch the screen with my fingernail, but by chance I had a coworker pop in for just at that second, and I turned the screen towards them and composed myself, and then I asked them casually and calmly as I could what they thought of the flowers I was picking out for Tammy, hoping, they would see it. They would see the spot, and they too would get weirded out, and we would, I don't know, it would just validate me somehow. And all they said was, she liked the ones on the right. And then I slung the screen back to me, and the spot was gone again. So then what were you thinking, Chuck? I thought I was going nuts, or the internet was under cyber attack. I thought maybe something was wrong with my computer, or that I needed to go see an eye doctor. I thought maybe I had gotten a bad coffee or a bad energy drink at some point. I thought maybe I had even been dosed by something. And so I calmed down as much as I could, at least about that. I had tons and tons of work to do, but then before I knew it, it was 5 o'clock. 5 o'clock started to roll around, and I was getting antsy to try to leave at my normal time, but there was nothing normal about the past few weeks, and then that's when I saw it again. It wasn't just on the internet or just on my laptop. It was on my big mouse double screens. my work screens. It was superimposed over the storyboards and my designs and animations, and there were 4 of them now, like little blotches, big spots etched on my stuff, and they were churning at me, and they made me angry. So then that's when the noises started, right, Chuck? At first, it was like a low hum, like a fan or an HVAC running in the other room, but it grew into a buzzing noise, like you put your ear to the ground around an underground yellow jacket nest or something, and before you ask again, no, this is not trypophobia or whatever the fear of wasps is or something like that. This is completely unnatural. And then, Chuck, then you said you touched it, right? Yeah, I touched the spot on my hero's new armor on my screen, and it wasn't on the screen really. I don't know, it's hard to describe. My fingers seemed to go in to the screen, like through the spot on the screen into the monitor, or behind it, or somewhere. Anyway, I panicked and I took my finger out of the monitor, and I think maybe I passed out for just a hint of a moment, like definitely more than a long blink, but not much more than that. And when I opened my eyes up again, my monitor, the one that I touched, was on the floor, and it was completely disassembled. I mean, like, it was like broken down into the base components, the chips, and like all the screen material was all scattered across my floor. But that wasn't all. The monitor was the other monitor was blank, and my tower wouldn't turn on. And I called it emergency IT, and they said that my drives were wiped down to the operating system. Fortunately, most of my work was saved to the backup servers, but I'd lost a few hours on that local machine. And then, Chuck, you said you were sent home. I couldn't really say anything about the spots to anyone. Definitely not my boss. He just took one look at me and the monitor that I apparently had just disassembled, and he said go until tomorrow. And I knew I was in deep. I didn't think I'd be fired, at least not before the end of the deadline, but I knew it was bad. So, and then, according to this, then you went to the BART station. Yeah, I went there, and there was one of those schedule kiosk type signs there that cycle through the trains and buses. And, well, Chuck, it says here your train was running late in the schedule row with your train on it. The schedule had a spot on it, too. And I came real close to it, like almost like kissing distance. And that was just enough. So this was the start of your actual crime spree, I suppose. The spot seemed to have like a vacuum that sucked in my breath and spit. I was breathing heavily because this thing, whatever it was, hadn't caught the sight of dozens of others around me, but just me. Just me. Anyway, I blinked again, and when I opened up my eyes, with no sound, no nothing, the whole screen of the scheduling kiosk was reduced to little chunks of glass, like little plastic or glass cubes bouncing around the whole station, top, both sides of it. I could step through the whole kiosk. Like, it was just, the whole screen was gone. It was just empty. And the metal bits and everything just seemed to roll off the station top into the rail bed and disappear. There's a few sparking wires and a little puff of acrid smoke, and that's all that remained. It was like magic. I mean, someone had to have noticed that, right? Like, a few kids took TikToks of the aftermath. I remember that, but no one was sure that they had just seen it explode and vanish. It was like we all blinked at the same time and nobody saw it. Well, Chuck, as you know, the security cameras did pick up your proximity to the kiosk and to the debris found, and you confessed in so many words, just as you did now, to said vandalism of some type. Yeah, I told the court what I told you. I breathed on something and destroyed it down to its base components by breathing on it. And then you went to the bar. After you destroyed the kiosk, you went to the bar. Yeah, I got off the train and got out of the station, and I was sweating, and Had my hands in my pockets. I was looking around. I was wondering if the police were after me or whatever for the station thing. I remember feeling just a bit relaxed since there were no screens around me where I was walking at the time. And my phone was buzzing with texts, but I refused to look at it. I walked past the puzzle tavern, and I kind of backed up and stopped. And see, they've got a lot of these little like patience type games with metal rings and loops and knots and bits of wood. Basically like bits of junk that you need to untangle. Like they have like a huge one that they hang just outside the threshold of the bar with a challenge on it. Solve this puzzle and drink for free. Of course, for free has little asterisks on it because they basically just give you a $50 gift card. It's a gimmick. I found out a long time ago. It's something, it's the same thing basically as a sign saying, free drinks tomorrow. But then I saw it. I saw a spot on that puzzle. This is the first time that you saw it on a non-digital object, is that correct? Yeah. Yeah. I almost tripped somebody as I was drawn towards it. How any of this was happening I didn't know. Before it was always on a screen, but I had come this far and I knew somehow I was going to touch it. Before I knew it, I was showing the bartender I had successfully disassembled that gimmick puzzle. No, the rings were twisted or broken, the wood was intact, and so was the rope. The spots, and I broke down the unsolvable puzzle, and they made good on the challenge money. And after a day like I was having, why not have a drink? But you got drunk. Is that correct, Mr. Victor? Yeah, I got pretty drunk. I was trying to sort together what was happening to me. It was starting to kind of stream together in my head that this was some sort of power or energy of all of the weeks of this job getting to me and all the years struggling out there. It was some sort of maybe pent-up rage or brilliance, like a cheat code or something, like a cheat code to tear things down, obstacles around me. I don't know. I didn't know what to make of it, since it was showing up randomly, but also I was mad at everything. I was mad at, a seemingly neglected animal in the video, and then the price of the flowers, and then my armor that I had spent days working on that I still didn't like the look of, and, no one else seemed to see it either, but it was like the spots were like some like inherent self-destruct button on things, one button, the X button on your programs or browser, whoosh, gone, deleted. Nearly from reality itself, or at least unraveled on some dimension of its material utility, right? Maybe I was going mad, and I started to wonder myself, was I going right? Not mad? But also, what was the limit to all this? How big or how complex of a thing could I just touch and blink out of existence? What if I found a spot on the ground? What if I stepped on it? Destroy the whole world? The whole world just like flies apart in space? Step on a crack, break everybody's back? And I started to get scared again, and I started thinking about that. So, what happened then? I was watching sports and the news, and I hadn't seen the spots anywhere for like 2 hours. I eventually started buying what my drunk brain was selling and realized I was a long way from my old home. It started raining pretty good, and I didn't want to use the train, so I figured I'd ask Tammy for a lift home since she was close, and we hadn't seen each other for a minute. So I ordered some bar food for us to share. Romantic, I know, right? Onion rings, cheese curds, crap like that. God, I'd kill for some of that food in here. Well, Chuck, maybe you're in luck. I'll see what I can do on the food front, but please do continue. I was going to meet Tammy a few blocks down from the bar, and I was carrying the food, and this guy just stepped out of the overhang and put a handgun in my face and demanded my wallet and the food. The barrel of the gun was basically straight in my right eye, and I dropped the food. I instinctively had my hands up, and the guy was waving it around, making motions to try to get me to get my wallet out. It took me a second to focus on the gun. And I realized that the gun was just one big spot. It was just all of the handgun was just this blotchy, shiny, black, green, purple squirm of I don't know, eye cancer. I don't know what to say again. I started to make off like I was more and more afraid than I was, and waving my hands around just a little bit, because I knew all I had to do was just brush up against the slide. And when I did that, the whole world dimmed out just a bit. And this time I watched in a split second the handgun and all of the bullets in the gun broke apart in his hand. The slide came off, the magazine fell out, the spring projected the individual bullets into the air, and then the shell, the gunpowder, the primer, and the bullet itself just all separated. Danced around on the ground. He looked at me, just totally frightened and dumbfounded, total turnaround type situation. But he still had the grip in his hand, and he seemed to still want to hit me with it. It says here in your file that your hand, that's when his hand sprouted in one of the spots. He just kind of turned his hand, and there it was, bubbling up on him. All I did was wave a finger at him, and he just took off running. So I picked up my takeaway boxes from the wet concrete. I had a moment's terror. What would happen if I touched the blotch on him? Or anything that's alive, for that matter. Yeah. So then Tammy took you home, right? And you didn't see the spots for hours. You didn't tell her about it, and you guys ate. That's what it says here, at least. Yeah, we ate. Then we have a bit of a fight over the work stuff and, not being around each other. She ended up sleeping on the futon, and I was on the chair. I checked my email one last time, and I saw that my boss told me my computer was fixed, and to make sure that I was there on time tomorrow. Everything just kind of felt like it was resetting. I started feeling like, all the day was just a bad dream, a weird fluke, a bunch of coincidences. And that I probably really, really needed to see an eye doctor. I don't know, maybe I had some kind of floaters in my eyes. I thought it was all over, I really did. Then Chuck, it says that you fell asleep on the chair and had a vivid dream. My dream was about the spots. It was just the spots, like one big spot, like TV static licking my eyeballs. And I woke up to Tammy screaming. And, I told you this morning, Cheddar likes to cuddle with me at night, and I guess I don't know, I just know that when I woke up, it was like me wearing his skin, like a long glove on my right arm, and my fingers were poking through his mouth and his eye sockets, and I was sitting in a little pile of his teeth, and his blood was just misted all over the chair and the floor. Tammy turned on the lights, and she was just screaming hysterically. And I was still coming out of that dream a bit and wondering if I was still in one. My other arm was wrapped around Cheddar's intestines, and the spots had just turned him inside out and pulled him apart on me. And then, I'm sorry about the loss of Cheddar. But then it says here that's when Tammy, in your words, started to freak out at you. She called me all sorts of things, and she was trying to get her phone and then even a knife from the drawer, I think, to protect herself. She really thought that I had purposely torn apart Cheddar. When she swung out from behind the kitchen counter with a knife, she turned all spotty, head to toe, but not the knife. She was almost like a two-dimensional object, and when she smoked or screamed, all that came out was that wave of buzzing energy, that wave of buzzing noise. After I saw what I did to the Cheddar, what happened to Cheddar, and everything else, I knew that if I touched her, even defensively, if she touched me, it would do unspeakable things to her. So I did the only thing that I felt that I could do, as she tried to push me out of the place. I had no choice but to stumble back through the screen door out to the balcony, where she continued to buzz at me and wave the knife. and I begged her to move, to get out of my way so I could just leave through the front door. She was so scared. Maybe she couldn't even hear me. I don't know. So I had to get away from her still, and so I climbed up over the banister and I tried to dangle myself over the dumpster because we were only like 2 stories up, and I thought maybe the trash would break my fall. Well, it definitely didn't. It says here then that the police found you with multiple broken bones in your legs, feet, and your arm, with a severe concussion. It says here the last time you saw the spots was on the police car that you managed to torch and touch after they tried to detain you. It says here that you burned it down. It's an understatement, Doc. It turned to ash. And then something, the spots or the blotches or whatever, they seemed to shoot out of me, like out of my fingers and face and just off into the sky. Again, kind of like how the blotches when you rub your eyes just sort of dissipate out. And I've never seen it again. I hope I never ever do. So that's the rap then. Chuck? Vandalism, cruelty to animals, making terrorist threats, according to Tammy, destruction of a police vehicle. I have to say that I'm amazed and perplexed. You've told this story consistently, nearly verbatim, for the past 4 years or so, up and down. I suppose that's at least part of the reason I've been so interested in your case. No, Doc, I never threatened Tammy. I told everybody a million times I was afraid that if she touched me, I told her to stay away for her own good. Whatever else is a misinterpretation on her part, she doesn't... How could she know? I don't... Calm down. There's the last bit here, I suppose, to double down on the consistency. It's an extraordinary story, but your history here demonstrates no threats, no violence. It's the story of what happened, Doc. No history of self-harm either, but... But what, Doc? But there's no history of you being permitted to use our creative facilities here either. No, Fletch. Fletch felt that, if I were allowed to draw or paint or something like that, it might trigger some residual part of what he calls a violent psychosis. Hey, wait a second. What other things... Why are you so interested in this case again? Well, Mr. Victor, then, if you're not allowed to use the facilities, then what is that spot of paint on your thumb? Huh? Where? Right there. Spot of paint. I don't see any. Right there. It's kind of shiny. Wait. What? No! Oh God, no! Please! Don't touch it! No! Afterward. Patient and inmate Mr. Charles Victor was found dead while in the care and custody of Dr. Gregory Towers under unusual circumstances in a treatment confinement room at Bay Area State High Security Mental Health Facility. A criminal homicide investigation is underway. However, homicide suspect Dr. Towers was able to escape custody, also under unusual circumstances, and is at large and thought to be armed and extremely dangerous. Again, this transcript has been lightly edited for anonymity and for clarity. The murder took place on August 26, 2022. No other official information is available at this time.